I think we can slowly start. Welcome, each and every one of you, for the first chapter of the local chatter. Can you hear it? Can you hear me? Yeah. Well, the local chatter is a space where people from art, architecture, design, and everything that lives around them can come together. Not as experts on stage, but as curious minds in the same room, to talk, to listen, to question, and to share what really happens behind their work. For those who don't know me, hello, my name is George. I'm a design director at Stapati. Tonight I have the easiest job as part of the first chapter of the local chatter. I'd like to introduce the chatter boxes. That's Bijoy Ramachandran and Sunita Kundur. Yeah, I literally had to rework on that name. I have that problem. Anyway, I'll tell you more about that. Well, for those who don't know them, you may quietly leave the room, reflect on your life choices, question your architectural education, Google them, and then come back wiser. No judgments, just mild disappointment. Only because there are architects we admire, and there are architects we study, we follow, and quietly aspire to emulate. Bijoy and Sunita are unmistakably in that second rare category. I should admit something up front. The local chatter was not born out of some grand cultural vision. It was born out of a very simple idea: how to get Bijoy to come to our studio. Well, so I gave it a cool name, pretended it was a serious series, sent him a message. 2 minutes and 43 seconds later, he replied, "Yes, where do I come?" At that moment, I realized two things. One, I didn't have to organize an event. And two, this is exactly why Bijoy is who he is. For someone, when someone says come, he does not ask why, how many slides, or what's in it for me. He simply shows up. Well, now I have no choice but to continue this series, because once Bijoy is on board, stopping would be an educational irresponsibility. So the local chatter will continue, and some future speaker seems to be already among us. Smart? Yeah, I'm talking about you. Well, now about Bijoy and Sunita. I'm not going to read out everything that's written on their biodata or on their website. I just want to tell you what I know and what I feel about them. When I try to think about the first time I met Bijoy and Sunita, I couldn't remember. And I think that's telling. Some people arrive in your life with a clear beginning. Others feel like they've always been there. Even before I met them, I was a fan. Architects, including my best friend, spoke about Bijoy and Sunita in such admiration that I assume statistically this has to be exaggerated. Surely no one could be so good and nice as people as well. Then I met them. And unfortunately for my skepticism, the rumors were true. Founded in 2003, 100 Hands is a Bangalore-based studio led by Sunita and Bijoy. Together they represent something rare in architecture. Brilliance without noise, rigor without ego, work that does not shout for attention but quietly earns your respect. The buildings don't say look at me, they say stay a while. Bijoy has a way of looking at architecture, especially sections, that makes you feel like you have been drawing them incorrectly your entire career. His thinking is calm, precise, and deeply generous. So much so that when many of us design, there is a small voice in our heads asking, what would Bijoy do? What would Bijoy think of this? Which is both inspiring and mildly terrifying as well. So Bijoy and Sunita, thank you for being friends, teachers, mentors, constant references in our minds. And thank you for those 2 minutes and 43 seconds that brought you here. Please put your hands together for Bijoy and Sunita.
Well, after that introduction, it's only going to be downhill. Well, thanks, George, for inviting me to your incredible studio. I mean, needless to say, we admire what you do, what you and Anupama have made here of a practice. There is a quiet restraint to the work, this idea of how materials are to be used. And so, truth be told, we are also asking the question, what would George think, when we deploy materials and when we think of the way things come together. So, all of you who are here from Sthapati, lucky to be in this office, in this incredibly charged place to work, and I'm sure the place has something to do with all of the lovely things that you produce. So congratulations on the new office and for inviting me to start what I'm sure is going to be an amazing treat for all of us over the years. So thanks for that. So I'm here with Suni, my wife and partner, Suni, and there are some of my office people here who know that all of your compliments are completely unfounded, but they've come thinking that you'll give them a guided tour through the office, so please don't disappoint them. So Suni and I run 100 Hands. We started the practice, like he said, in 2003, and it's been a slog, I mean, it's been whatever, 25 years of just hitting your head against the wall in a way, and so architecture is just a kind of act of quiet perseverance, I think. And so it's nice when you get an opportunity to look back, and so this presentation that I'm making today is the one that I made in Goa a few months ago. Some of you, probably were there. So it's not changed very much, but it was a nice opportunity to put together drawings that we've made over the years that were special to us and that captured either a brilliant idea that we pursued and made into something meaningful, or also those wonderful drawings that never became anything, that they just stayed on the table and at some point changed and evolved into something else. And it's telling for us that when you look at drawings, that we always look at these amazing drawings, particularly like someone like, Piano. In Renzo Piano's book, there's always this amazing sketch at the start of the chapter of one of the projects. And it's like he sat in a room and he just drew this amazing drawing, and there was the idea for the project. And of course, it's all bullshit. You're great. Piano's probably doing it 5 years after the project is over. This is what it was about. And oftentimes you think that the onus is on you to make this amazing drawing, and it is the great work depends on that, and for that you're always burdened that you're never going to be able to create that sublime drawing. And there are projects in here where you see that you start somewhere, and then there are conversations and things that come as you work, that then things evolve and change, and often for the better. And so sometimes that first sketch leads to nothing, and you should be fine with that. It's also, I started with this image in Goa, and it's when we were doing a hotel in Bangalore in Whitefield. There was this one guy who would make these amazing drawings of animals on the site, and there's this amazing cat. But what's amazing about it is that it preempts by a few years Palasma's book, so he collapses all the senses onto that little triangle of the face. So it's like the eyes of the skin, or it could be the eyes of the ears, or the eyes of the nose, or whatever. That all of the senses are collapsed into this small portion, as if this cat has all of it. Sort of, he's able to, she's able to sense her reality through this very, very small, portion of her face. It was really nice to see this eyes and ears and everything sort of collapsed into one image. It's also important, and this is, of course, Magritte. This is, early 1900s, painting the pipe, and then he says at the bottom, "This is not a pipe," and he calls it the treachery of images. And today, this painting is more pertinent, more telling than when he painted it at first, because we're enraptured by the images that we're surrounded with, on your phones, on your computers, everywhere, that somehow we begin to believe that is the reality, that is reality, that's architecture, that's what it's like. But one needs to have an embodied experience with things to then understand what it is. So you need to smoke the pipe, you need to hold it, you need to feel that walnut, you need to put the tobacco. I'm not suggesting you should smoke, but I'm saying that you need an embodied experience. Magritte picked the pipe, not me. So that's that. So which one of them is true? Is the image true, or is the word pipe written at the bottom true? And what do you believe? And unless you have, and so Magritte is suggesting that one has to live in the world, be in the world, to actually know what it is, what the truth is. I was fortunate enough, we included some drawings at the end of the presentation of this wonderful masterclass I did many years ago with Murcutt. And Murcutt had this amazing, this is something that he just said in one of the desk grits about, drawing. And he said to draw, and draw is a wonderful word. It's like you pull something out, the meaning or the essence of something that you're drawing out. But when you draw, you reveal, and when you reveal, you understand, and when you understand, that's the beginning of knowledge. And so once you have the knowledge, you know how to behave, how to intervene, how to engage with the world. And so the beginning of it is drawing, and drawing is not just drawing, but to draw the essence out and to be able to observe and pull that out. And these are some of my heroes, people who taught me and whose drawing styles I sort of imbibed and continue to copy shamelessly, particularly Fred Coulter, who wrote that amazing book with Colin Rowe, and was, I was lucky to work with him for 2.5 years. And those drawings you will soon see are exactly like the ones I make. So it's fine, you pick your heroes, you follow those traditions of how you draw and how you see, and how Fred would capture the thing that you want to focus on the sketch by just darkening a little bit that portion of the sketch, so that you get a sense of shadow and depth and perspective. And Fred was so good at doing that. And so his buildings then evoke those senses of cadence, those senses of depth, those senses of perspective, because in the drawing is embedded that sense of how deep and how wide he wants to, cast his net. The last sketch is by Richard, the tall man, a second from the right. It's a beautiful sketch of Ellora. He goes on a motorcycle when he's around 25 years old, riding across from Bombay to Calcutta. He stops at Ellora and he makes drawings in his book. And he says the moment he made that section of Ellora, he understood the metaphor of these cave temples. That as a young initiate, you would come at the bottom of that cave structure. You'd come through those gates. Your view out is obfuscated because of the gates. And the Buddha is sitting deep inside the cave, and you can barely see him because there's no light deep into the cave. And so as a young man coming into the order, you have no perspective and you have no sense of the truth. And as you make your way up in the order and evolve, you come up above the gate onto that upper level, and now you have perspective, you can see the horizon, and now there's light on the Buddha and the truth is evident. Isn't that beautiful? So embedded in that section is the idea or the essence of the order. And then of course Anil Dubey, who taught all of us, I think, and had an amazing, he had this one drawing which unfortunately I think got washed away or got burnt or something like that. It's legend now, right? This one drawing he made for a conservation project where he'd written everything out, and he had this amazing calligraphy he has. And so a lot of the way that I draw comes from time spent with Mr. Dubey. And so each of you have, in the back of you, these people who've sort of guided you or pushed you in a certain direction. So always remember to recall those lessons in the work that you do, because there's gold in that time that you spent with your teachers. And of course, Graham Morrison, who I'll show you the Nalanda project that sketches from. So the presentation is split into 3 chapters. There's to communicate, drawings to communicate, drawings to consider or to think, and drawings to contemplate, to consider, to think, and to contemplate. Yeah. So communicate is when you make a drawing. This is a very literal sort of, it's a wonderful cartoon which says, here I am standing in front of all of you, making my presentation and showing you this picture. And in my mind, it's a flower, but because I haven't drawn it very well, there's someone in that crowd who thinks it's a bee, or someone who thinks it's an aeroplane. So this idea of communication, of how you communicate the central idea, just like Fred's sketch, what's where is the darkness, where is the focus, what are you trying to get your friend to see, your colleague to see, and how you make a drawing to communicate that. So these are very, very early drawings we made for a project that never got built. But it was at the far right is the section of that building which shows you the three, there's a diagram on the left and the section on the right, and you can see these three nodes in that plan. The node which is on the street, this little threshold that you cross, the courtyard in the center of that plan, and this double volume at the back, which is the place where it was a small hotel, and it was a place that was the living room of this small hotel on Laval Road. And so the drawing is basically trying to, and of course, at that point I said, let me try to make drawings like Ching, let me make a set of Ching drawings. And then Ching visited, DK Ching, isn't that his name? Yeah. He visited Bangalore. We gave him this as a little, he wasn't very impressed, but yeah, we gave him the drawings nonetheless. And this was a few years later at the Venice Biennale. We were selected to show, we entered into a competition, but the image on the left is this was made by, I think Pramod made that drawing, Pramod Jaiswal, who now runs Between Spaces, but it's a beautiful drawing that tells you about the various artifacts that were embedded into that context on the edge of the ocean in the south of Italy, where they were reclaiming all of these industrial lands to create a new public forum. And so what we did, which was very clever, I thought, we didn't win the competition, but we were shortlisted one of 6, is to embed into the fort. And so there's a 30-meter level difference between the old city and the waterfront. And so we embedded a device into the fort, exactly the same size as the Pompidou. So it's the same height, the same width and breadth, embedded into that fort. And so you would come up from the medieval town onto the upper level of this museum, make your way down the museum and enter out into this amazing plaza and waterfront at the lower level. So it was this great section, and these were the different buildings that we then proposed on that waterfront. This is again Pramod and Divya on a set of projects. I think Nayanthara made the one on the left, that's Pramod and Divya on the right. But these are drawings which are basically telling you about all of the bits and pieces that go to, and I think Sthapati does this really well, this idea of articulating how materials are put together to reveal them, to articulate them, and to make them special in the way that they come together. And so both these drawings are about, one is about components, about all of the things that we added onto an existing structure to make this new hotel. And the one on the right is all of these different layers of things that we added onto the building. The inner layer of glass wrapped with brick, then the stone staircase, then the little metal frame, and then the timber screen. These layers of things on the southern facade, which then shielded the building from the glare. This is a recent drawing of Sabaha, which is a public building on Commercial Street. There's a lovely drawing by Pranil which basically says that, here's the old building, it had all of these little bits and pieces. There was timber, there was stone, there was, all kinds of stuff. And all of it, like a phoenix, is alive again in the new building, but now used in different places. The timber was taken from one part of the building, reshaped, made into windows, made into roof elements. The flooring was carted out of one room, while we did all of the waterproofing, and then cut into different sizes to make all of the corridor flooring. So it's like you use the right materials, robust, long-lasting, you can reuse them, reshape them, repurpose them over time. And so this was a drawing that just showed all of the different components and where they went and where they live again in that project. This is Lakshay and Remin, wonderful architect. Lakshay and Remin was a trainee from Avni. Beautiful drawing through Sabha, showing you basically the spaces between buildings, but also that lovely, and just the proportion of these old buildings, and how they just seem to know exactly to do them perfectly. The perfect height, the perfect width. I mean, they could, and when we started drawing these buildings, we realized that nothing is equal. That there are windows that seem to be all equally spaced on the end walls, but they're all of different heights, slightly different. They're slightly wider or narrower. And yet when you're in that space, it just feels graceful and perfect. And all we did was just to clean them up, and there they are again, alive and kicking. And then the rear court with the stuff that we added, the cafe and the utility building. But a beautiful drawing that tells you about the depth and quality of these two rooms. This is a competition that we lost. The great thing about losing a competition is that you can then say that ours would have been so much better than the building that is built. I don't know if you agree, but this is the Music Experience Museum. You can tell me later in secret. But this is a heroic sort of building on the edge of this long promenade in Brigade Millennium. And so these big towers would always be seen like that image on the left, in the middle, which is these big sort of drums of black concrete. We thought of these as heroic black concrete drums with timber skylights, these huge oculi that brought light deep into the plan, framed by this, metal, which then was constantly changing because of the various exhibitions and things that would go on. But these drawings basically evoking the quality of just, these components put together and trying to communicate the scale and quality of these buildings. We were very fortunate to get Dijan. He was going to the Bartlett. He had that 1 year gap between his undergraduate, his part 1 and part 2 in the UK. He was a Nepali boy who came to the office just for 3 months or something and did these amazing drawings for us for a project in Coorg, evoking, of course, Lucky Senanaike, the great artist from Sri Lanka. In fact, many of those trees are copied directly from one of Baba's plans and put into this plan to just show it's on a sloping site and they're all nestled one into the other, these houses. And there was this series of water channels that then captured the essential waterway that was in the middle of that sloping site. And so you would hold this water over time and release it slowly down into the valley and into the stream. So it was a beautiful set of drawings that he made for the office. But to communicate the idea of this massive garden that each house had, the quality of this waterway that this house sat up against, and the notion of these nestled buildings, one into the other in that section. We've been very fortunate in the office to have amazing people make incredible drawings. This is Pratik. But sometimes they make the beautiful drawing just as they're leaving the office as a gift. Like, whoa, come on. You could have done this, but Pratik was amazing at the office. He worked on, a lot of our projects over the past, 4 years, 3 years. And this is a building that he worked on as we were handing it over in Nandi Hills. But he kind of went back to the old Pitchwai paintings to communicate the idea that this is like the house for 1,001 nights, with all of these terraces and places to frolic and party in the shadow of those majestic Nandi range, while peacocks danced on the roofs and gods flew past in the sky. So this beautiful terrace in the middle, which is really the heart of the house, where now of course they're living there, and you can see that it is living that kind of it's living up to that name. This is Surabhi Banerjee and Devanshu. Surabhi, of course, has become an incredibly sought after illustrator. She worked as an architect in our office for nearly 3 years and made, again, you'll see multiple drawings that she's produced in the office. But this is a study of Alsur market, where this was for Aniket Bhagwat's exhibition called Death of Architecture. And we took that charge of Death of Architecture, saying that in old city precincts, the architecture actually starts disappearing because of all of the, I don't want to say detritus, but all of this ephemera that then, comes out in the day and occupies the streets and then vanishes in the night. That there's this kind of, there's this kinetic, moving armature, which is architecture, because it houses people, it houses retail, it does all kinds of things. And so they did these amazing drawings to capture, at certain points during the day, all of the stuff that happened outside of the formality of these buildings on the edge of Alsur Market Street. That's the big Shiva temple in the heart of Alsur, and that wonderful street that connects Alsur Tank to the road on the right. And then taking from there, we made these these rather ridiculous, heroic versions of those ephemeral objects to create city-scale infrastructure that then captured the roofs of buildings. And so we had this lovely, this girl from the Welsh University from Cardiff, and she made a compendium of bits and pieces that you get from all of these things, the carts, the canopies, the little benches, So she created a kind of, kit of parts, and then Surabhi ran with it. She took all of that apart and then made these big things, sort of exploded them in scale, and made these large impositions on. This is again Surabhi. This is Ira Academy, predicated on that amazing section. This was Orko Banerjee, great young architect who worked in our office. He basically did this project. He arrived on the day we got the job and left the day it was handed over. He'd had enough at the office. But nonetheless, it was amazing because Orko it's magical actually. You go in there and so much of it is chance encounter. It's, all of the things that, as an institution, they've started to really enjoy the fact that so much of the life of this school is outside of the classrooms, in these places where you have your snack or, you do your performances, that's the life and that's the memory you carry back as you go out of school, that all of the things that you did outside of the classrooms. And so it's predicated on that amazing, light coming from above. And the fact that this is oriented north-south, you get this really benign sort of quality of light inside through the day, all of the hot air coming up and getting out at the top. So there's a constant draft through that center of the building. It's quite lovely. And then these are some drawings during COVID. We were thinking, oh my God, we just handed over the project, and I said, that's the reality, that this building is going to be devoid of any people forever. And oh my God, and then the next day I woke up in the morning and I made that. And I took all of my kids' favorite artists and put them all, from Maurice Sendak to Stephen Guernica to Barbara McClintock, all of these people that they really loved. And there's No David. I don't know if you know David. David, the most mischievous kid in the world. He's painting the column there. He's doing some mischief there at the end there. But suddenly it's alive, right? And buildings need that. All of these wonderful things we do, after it's handed over, that's when it actually starts becoming something meaningful with all of the kids and it, luckily, COVID passed and we forgot all of its lessons and everybody's out. So this is Ira, just some few pictures. This is IISc, another building which is completely organized in the quality of that in-between space, and it's just taking Ira and it's Ira on steroids, just pumping it up another few notches so that you get this real incredible quality of in-between space, and to really tweak the intensity of darkness and light within the building so that you really get a sense of moving through in time and registering the quality of light as you move through that building. So these are some images of that in-between space and the quality of this passing light. Again, a building oriented north-south with this long skylight and a series of staircases and amphitheaters within. So the last one about drawing to communicate is Neil McLaughlin, of course, who just won the RIBA Gold Prize. He did this amazing exhibition in Venice called Losing Myself, and it's based on this project that he was doing for Alzheimer's patients. And what he did is that he got cameras to record from below a glass table, and everybody was drawing on trace. They were drawing the way that they passed through this. So there was a plan, and then each person would come and start drawing, and maybe multiple people are drawing how they're going to wake up in their room, go have their breakfast, and then go wherever else. And everybody in the office is doing that, but they're overlaying on top of it again and again new traces of pathways in the afternoon, in the evening, late in the evening, etc. But what's amazing about it is, in some sense, it captures that essential quality that a lot of dementia patients have, which is of this inability to remember past a certain point. That there's a very short, they have very short-term memory, and then they can't remember where they are. They get disoriented. And this drawing exercise kind of revealing that distance from memory, that somehow as you go, the drawings are getting further diffuse, that they're kind of disappearing. There's a wonderful video online, but what a lovely way, not lovely, but what a poignant way to communicate this idea of loss, that there's this kind of inability to orient oneself in the world. And it was, it got the gold leaf at the Biennale when he had this amazing exhibition. McLaughlin has just been operating at a high level from the very beginning, and every time he does architecture, but then he also has ways in which to communicate what he's trying to achieve through this architecture. The building itself is an amazing piece of this kind of, to create places of pause, each of them distinct with different kinds of landscapes, so that you're always able to orient yourself in terms of the time of day and where you are with respect to landscape, that there's something really dramatic and powerful in the relationship between open space and these rooms. The second one is drawing to understand, drawing to sort of comprehend. This is Minard. Minard is one of the greatest. I think this and that Napoleon's march into Russia. I don't know if you've seen that map, but these are some of the greatest maps, basically conveying information. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but this is a map which shows wine export from France in 1860s or something. And so wine comes predominantly at that time, at least a lot of the wine came from the south of France. And so the thicker the brown swath is, the more the wine is being produced and exported. So a lot of wine from the south is going, of course, to Italy. There's a lot of wine being produced on the west coast of France, and a lot of that is going up to, the northern part of Europe. Some of it going, of course, to their colonies on the east, on the western side of Africa, on the eastern coast of. But there's one lonely ship that's making its way across the Horn of Africa, going all the way across and coming to Pondicherry for that one guy who's waiting for his wine from France, It's such an amazing map. The moment you see it, the power of the empire, how powerful they are, how many people there are, it just conveys immediately a clear and obvious reading. It's just the most amazing map. And you should seek him out. I mean, it's just he's done a great set of maps, and these are just drawings from the book that I'm carrying now, thanks to Himanshu. He's scanned these drawings. But the drawings don't have to be beautiful. They're basically just registering. And these are drawings that have been made during a review. I think this was at CEPT a few months ago. And they're just registering each of the projects that we're seeing and the central idea in that project. There's that wonderful, in the last one on the bottom right, you can see it shared such a beautiful scheme, next to, it was in Kathmandu, and it's next to this temple, beautiful pagoda-like temple. And her response was to create a yin and yang thing, to create almost a subversion next to it. It was such a powerful diagram that she had. She topped the class. That was a great project. And so the moment you're inside that amphitheater, you get a sense of the scale and quality of that just by that juxtaposition. And it's such a simple. So, keep a diary, draw, even if they're not great drawings. If you look at Peter Rich's thing, you'd stop drawing. You have to retire. But it's important because I immediately remember that particular. I know the temperature in that basement, at Sagara basement at CEPT. I know where I was sitting, I know what I was looking at, and I know what I was thinking. I was hungry, I was thirsty for a tea, and then Smith, stopped the thing while we were talking. He brought tea for all of us. The drawing then brings you back that moment, it brings you, and that's very precious, as you don't have to show anybody your drawings. And these are other drawings that, I made a trip some years ago thanks to Suni's, Suni allowed me 10 days off. I escaped alone and made this pilgrimage. I visited all the old places that I had gone to, I would get out of the hotel in the morning with a book, with a cap, some water, and just be drawing. And it was the most glorious time. And they're not great drawings, but again, I know when I was at the Agra fort, and by making that map of, in the Agra fort, there's this amazing, the harem, where all of the ladies used to live. But in making that map, I didn't have a plan with me of the fort. And then the moment I made that, in the middle top sketch, you can see that plan. I was making, and it's a labyrinth in there with little curved, because they don't want people to be able to storm the harem. You can get any part of the fort, it's easy to invade and capture, but the harem you can't. It's tough to get in there. It's got all of these little, corridors and secret chambers. But the moment I made the plan, it suddenly became obvious that it's a symmetrical plan, that it's convoluted, it disorients you. But in drawing it, suddenly its clarity was revealed, So the drawing suddenly makes makes that evident. And of course, Sikri and all these great monuments. And then I've had the great good fortune of spending time with some great architects. This is Zumthor. Zumthor came to Bangalore in February 23, I think, or 24, 23. And so I made it, 2 weeks. Suni's great generosity, I took some days off. And I was sitting and reading Zumthor while, clients are calling, like, what about our drawings? Zumthor. And I was showing them Zumthor's drawings and they're like, get lost, where's my plan? But Kuke heard that Zumthor is coming and that I'm going to talk to Zumthor, and he came with these 7 cloth-bound books and he said, here, make it count, he said. In his own way, he said, do it well. And so I went through everything, drew everything out. I knew the plans. I knew everything about Zumthor, And then of course he came and it was just magic. I think George was whistling after that. It was very embarrassing. But we took Zumthor to IIM Bangalore. Of course, everybody who meets me has to go to IIM Bangalore. And there's Zumthor with Mohe and Kuke and all of us at IIM Bangalore. And then we made this drawing of all of his projects at the same scale. Scale's really useful. And there's Zumthor saying, oh my God, my projects are so small. Like his famous chapel is like the size of one of the toilet blocks in IIM Bangalore, But scale helps you, right? It tells you how important some of these little things have such a resonance across time, as does, of course, Doshi's incredible masterwork. But small also has importance. And then I was able to meet Aravena in Wayanad, and again, spent a lot of time reading up about him. It was great. It was a strange evening where we didn't finish our conversation and this politician basically hijacked the stage. And Aravena's like, he can't figure out what's going on. Like, this guy comes and sits between the two of us, and I'm asking Aravena questions, and he doesn't speak English, the politician. Or he does, but he was speaking in Malayalam, and it was very odd. But I guess it was fine. And then, of course, with McLaughlin in Goa, which was again, he's just, you guys should seek him out. I mean, take a look at his work. He recalls all of those lessons from Khan, in such a beautiful and effective way, in the most glorious way. There's that wonderful library you can see in the image on the bottom right, which is exactly predicated on a plan that Khan would make with the master and servant grid, like a lattice. And this library just simply organized on a way to catch light and bring that into the library. Most beautiful, simple, obvious, but elegant buildings. So congratulations to him on his gold medal. And then we went with Peter Rich on a trip across South Africa. I made all these drawings. I thought they were amazing, but then when Peter Rich shows you his drawings, you have to just say thank you very much. Look at these drawings. I mean, this is some Garbhagriha somewhere in Ganpur. I'm sure that's not the right spelling of that place. But you can feel, I don't know, I can feel the temperature inside that sanctum, I can feel what it's like to be there. And for a drawing to communicate that, how do you draw so that you remember and understand what it felt like to be there? That's amazing. I mean, and so many of Peter's drawings evoke that quality of embodied experience. These are drawings. Sanjana Pandey was an architect who worked with us. She basically did Sabha. She was responsible for almost all of it. But she meticulously, and this is drawings to comprehend, to understand the logics of this old building. We've never done a building like that with all of this articulation, embellishment. So to really get to it, to do what we did maybe in second year BC or something, studying Ionic capitals and Corinthian capitals and all of these little dimensions and then also to register all of the damage, what members are bending, which places the plaster has fallen off. Just incredible. I mean, a beautiful set of drawings, just remembering the quality in which we had received this building, with all of that plaster gone, water leakages and damage. And so I think in the registering of what existed is the beginning of then imagining what you can do with it. Because without understanding that, you can't get to that. And of course, we don't take much credit for what finally happened at Sabha. So much of it is because of this amazing, restorer from Bombay, a guy called Nilesh, who just, I mean, we basically had to stay out of his way so that he would just do it properly, you know, and we would just tell him, okay, I think it needs to be a little darker gray, and he'd say, okay, this is what we did. But an amazing engineer, an amazing architect with Sanjana, you know, at the office, and then there were others, Amrita, Ganga, you know, all of them, Ria, and then this is of course Sabha, with now renovated. So all that stone is actually salvaged from one of the buildings. All of the rafters for this cafe was all salvaged, like in Pranil's lovely drawing. And all of those big beams you see in Sabha were all replaced with new timber, slipping the old beams out, pulling the new beams in without disturbing the Madras terrace, and reusing that timber for the roof in the cafe. And then drawing to think. So this is the last chapter, and then I have a lot more after this, so brace yourselves. This is my undergraduate thesis. Those days when there were no computers, we were doing everything by hand. I remember we spent 2 weeks. Ranjit Naik, my friend, who's an architect here in Bangalore now, dearest friend of mine, he said, he's junior, Suni's classmate. And then he said, you're going to Bombay, you're going to study Bangalore. Chalo, I'll also come. I mean, jobless, he's got studio class, he's come. And 2 weeks we spent in Banganga, and he measured all of this stuff with me, you know. We didn't have drawings, nothing, you know. I mean, I don't know how. So anyway, I made a proposal for one of the projects there, a small insert. But these are basically drawings that, you know, from starting with that drawing, you know, you see the image, the third image from the left, are these plans of these buildings which have the central corridor which then connects the ocean to the tank. And we thought that was a beautiful device to make this connection from that, you know, the entirety of the world with that microcosm inside, you know, the tank that's in the heart of Banganga. So these are some thesis drawings from before any of you were born. This is taxidermy. Now this is amazing. So this is, you know, Bruce Lee Money and Rajiv Rajgopal are Prem's friends, my brother's friends, and they say, okay, fine. Sherry, another friend of ours, says, you know, you're doing a studio, why don't you go to Bijoy, he's a good architect. And so they come to our office 2 weeks after having told us what they want. They've given us the plan, and then I make this plan, and I'm meeting them for the first time, Bruce and Rajiv. And they're both looking at each other and they're saying, this guy doesn't know anything. You know? Like, this is a studio for music, you know, you can't play music in any of those rooms because you. And so then Bruce very patiently says, you know, Bijoy, have you heard of flutter echoes? Do you know about bass booms? And I'm like, you know that this is a recording studio, right? So I said, yes. No, but can't you put acoustic panels? I asked them, and I said, no, we don't want to do that. And then as Bruce was explaining it, I started, you know, rethinking what they wanted. And so this idea that, you know, what to hear your clients and your colleagues, you know, to be able to assimilate what they're saying. I mean, that's such a core. Nothing would have happened with that plan that I presented to them without Bruce's and Rajiv's input. And so the next day morning, I came back in the office early in the morning, and I had that plan like in an hour. You know, it was just done. It had everything that they wanted. It created all of this interstitial space outside, which then created taxidermies. Taxidermy starts with this recording studio. And of course, now they're all online, and they've sort of gone away from these physical spaces. But this is the genesis of that idea with the band. But then these become really wonderful places to play music because you get no focal, you know, no sound coming back to one point. And you know, it works so well with these hollow brick enclosures made, you know, as little booms in which you would then play music. They recorded 4 albums in that recording studio. We got mentioned in the liner notes of one of their albums. That's all you need. Yeah. And then Go Native Retail. This is in an industrial part of town in Hooghly. And so we were thinking about the industries, the old, and some traces of these long line manufacturing industries you can see around, these long buildings, which are basically just sequential manufacturing sheds. And so we were thinking of making a building like that, which had this kind of, you know, a kind of cadence, a simple organization of structure. And so we just kept playing with that idea of doing, you know, this kind of cadence. And soon we had a plan, you know, a plan that then created a kind of armature of metal, and within that armature of metal we introduced some brick elements, and we retained the old gable end of the factory that used to be on this site. We registered 3 trees, large trees that existed there, and so this frame basically meanders around the trees and around these obstacles and brick that we'd introduced. Divyang worked on this. Divyang worked at Stapati briefly before coming to our office, and we really got a lot out of him. I mean, these amazing drawings that he made, beautiful models, all of the detailing of this beautiful building done by Divyang. Just quite an amazing guy. We struggled a lot with that facade because originally we were going to demolish everything, and then finally one day we had the idea that we would keep the wall that the old factory had on the front, and that then became really the special move in the project, where you get this dialogue between the old and the new, and this the metal and the heaviness of the brick and the porosity of the metal. Neve again starting with a plan like that, and then we've already shown it to the client. She loves it. Let's go with it. We're starting to do quantities. And then Charles Correa comes to the office. We have an event in Vimal's memory, and Correa comes to the office, and on my table is this book on, this review issue on the mat building. And then Correa gets into a frenzy about it. He talks about the Gandhi Smarak, he talks about Berlin Open University, and I said, oh man, the mat building. And then the next day we made our own mat building because Correa told us to do that. But the amazing thing about the mat is that it creates what Kavita wanted. She was always asking for a school that was 50% or more outside of the classroom. And the genesis of all of those other schools and IISc and everything that we've done comes from that one encounter with Correa at the office. The idea that you would predicate an educational institute on the stuff that happened outside of program. And so this building has a very nice parasol roof, creating a benign, comfortable space for kids to play around, to just hang around. And the classrooms then create the sort of enclosure for the living, breathing center of campus. So that's the plan of Neve, with these clusters of 3 classrooms. So they have 3 sections in each of these classrooms, and those classrooms have little spill outs where they have their own private play, but then the center of the school is used for all kinds of stuff, and the library opens out into the center, creating this large space that then becomes common and public for everyone. And so it's a very, very simple structure in terms of its structure, predicated really on the size of the classroom, a 600 square foot classroom, and just organized on the basis of that. So that's really the map, this notion of structure. And by shifting the location of the building, of the rooms, you get terraces and offsets that then become... we struggled a lot to convince Kavita about that parasol roof above. We did all kinds of crazy options. And then finally she said, okay, fine, let's go with it. And Manju did this beautiful design for that parasol, which has recently been fixed up after 10 years. They had a lot of leakage issues, but now, finally, it's a beautiful space that then is in the heart of that. So these are some drawings and all of the ways in which one is trying to imagine that in-between space. And that's Neve. It's quite a nice environment for kids in the middle there. This is Nalanda University. This is a project that we did with Allies and Morrison. We made a trip out to Nalanda, Graham Morrison and I. It's incredible. I mean, if you get a chance, you must visit. It's heroic. It's like what Utsun talks about. You're coming to this ruin under the canopy of very, very dense foliage. You come out into the space. You make your way up onto the mound, and for a minute you have a view out onto the horizon, as if to say that now you are in control of your destiny. This is what Utsun says, in that great essay called Platforms and Plateaus. And it really feels like that. Everybody is climbing up there to get a sense of their place in the world. But these heroic brick mounds are one part of it, where all the cloisters are, when all the education happened in the middle of that courtyard. But really what was really amazing for us was the stuff that was happening between things. these amazing interstitial spaces that are amazing quality of scale, of shade. And it just felt like that's really what Nalanda is about. It's not the big archetype, but it's the stuff that happens between the archetypes, the space between things. And so we went to that site, a beautiful flat site, 500 acres of it. In March, Graham and I are standing in the middle of the site and it's flooded with water that hasn't dried up yet in Rajgir, which means that's the amount of water in the rains that have come off of the hills and collected on these flat plains. So one of the essential things about the scheme was handling the management of this water on that site. Yeah, this would be a great place to put a huge city. This is what Graham and I were thinking, like what a terribly unfortunate thing. I mean, who wants to build here, right? So there's the 500. Luckily, we didn't win this competition, so I have no guilt. So there's the 500-acre site. There's Rajgir town, and there's a road highway on the top, a railway track at the bottom. And we thought of the site as a campus, as a crossroads between the railway tracks, the different villages that dotted the peripheries, and the idea that the campus had this kind of asymmetry. The highway on the top required a much more cloistered condition, and then prospect out to the hills on the south. That meant that the plan had this kind of asymmetry to it, with some kind of a pedestrian way across. That's the first sketch that Graham made in our office after having visited the site, and it captures essentially what our scheme is about. These two connections out to the highway, these two nodes where the streets come and meet, this central spine which is pedestrian, and these fingers out to the landscape on the south. Quite an amazing sketch. And then we were always, I mean, as you're sketching, you're also thinking about scale. How long is that pedestrian way? 300 meters is the IIM corridor, the long corridor. And so, of course, you copy, you think of the things that you like and you put them in your plan so that you get a sense of what the scale of things is. But what's great about the Allies and Morrison plan is that they took the program, which was massive, thousands of things that you had to accommodate. There were 7 schools in Nalanda, and so they took all of the program, divided it into 7, divided it by 7, and so they took one school and put all of this program, a 7th of the program around it, to create the essential module for the plan. So if you put this block 7 times on that site, you would get all of the program that they wanted. Such a simple device. And after you did that, you then started massaging it to get qualities that you were desiring. But to come to that was, just simple and wonderful as a way to proceed. And so then there's all kinds of drawings that are basically, we're struggling around trying to find a way to lay this campus out. Kiran Kumar, who teaches at Mysore, made these drawings, amazing drawings that evoke the quality of that interstitial, that pedestrian spine in the middle, connections out to the landscape. Quite amazing drawings, Kiran's. And then we also thought this, we didn't pursue unfortunately, but Kiran and I really were trying to think of this big mound at the heart of campus that you would climb up and get that sense of destiny. We didn't do it though, which is unfortunate. Which is why we lost the competition. But there's the library and the dining block in the heart of that. And this is the scheme basically with the library there, the big meditation center, the museum and the dining block there. We were also thinking that the moment you took the school and all of this program and did the 7th of it, you would get a kind of mixed use plan, which means that the housing, the departments, they were all together in one part of the campus and not like the traditional campus where you would split things up. And it really felt like it was a simulacrum of a city, mixed use, dense, and vibrant. So simple buildings and open space, complex open spaces is of course from Nalanda. A lot of Khan's plans are like that, where the in-between is what is amazing. And then these are just diagrams telling you about, I'm going to go quick from here. This is phasing of that plan, but also this lovely drawing that Alfredo did, which says that we start with that module, a 4 meter by 4 meter module, what is possible to do with brick, and everything then becomes a feature of that. So somehow in terms of the cadence of elevations and the cadence of structure, that you get this repetition which is embedded into the language of these buildings. And these are all the different kinds. So all the department buildings at the bottom, the special buildings in the middle, and then some housing and things on the top. So these are some images of that settlement at the base of the Rajgir Hills, with the library, with those two campanile at the center of the meditation hall, the museum, the library, and the dining hall. We did the dining hall, this heroic Moneo-like vaulted building. I don't know, 9 meters tall or 15 meters tall or something, some massive. I don't know how we would have ever built any of it, but yeah, it was. Competitions are great. So yeah, this is just the spine. There's the dining hall in the distance with this massive portal, and that street in the middle, which would be something out of an Italian, like something from Amarcord. I don't know. Have you seen Amarcord? But there's the Campanile and this kind of really Italianesque brick city. Another competition, again we lost. What a sad presentation. But yeah, I mean, you do them. This is, of course, John is here. John worked on this, Parikshit, John, all of them. We broke our heart to lose it. Kiran was with us on this one as well. I mean, it's this incredible site, again flat as a pancake, and these massive multi-purpose halls where you would play, indoor sport and things in the heat of Bihar, air-conditioned boxes, and this, they've got no scale. They're just massive because you've got to play badminton or whatever else you play in there. But there's no scale to them, and so we were really struggling to think of what we could do to give them some scale, to give them the quality of being made by hand, that they were off the land, and that then these were embedded within this kind of layer, which is this red stuff, which then gave these buildings quality. And so these are some very early sketches of that thing. But really, the idea that you would embed these large sheds within this really articulated earthen, termite hill-like things that then housed all of the services that these big halls needed: the coaches' offices, the spa, the showers, the reception areas, the medical facilities. That they were all housed within these articulated peripheral elements, and then you would get the pure space. And we thought it would be great. It would be like as if in the heart of these Nalanda archetypes you would then embed. That's beautiful drawing by Kiran, which gives you the sense of these things really put into that. Yeah, it would have been great. But also this, and also from within the hall, if you were to create this incredible contrast, in terms of quality, and just go for it, just relentless, without detail. So it just felt, and you played with the light to play up that contrast, Yeah, someday. And then this, BIC is, again, we start with the competition that we won, but then everything is turned upside down. So this is the sketch on the poster. It's the sketch of the competition which captures on plan and in 3D the main organizing principles of our BIC competition entry. Our dear friends like to irritate me by saying, if only you had built that one. And I said, what about the one that we built? Yeah, that's okay. So this one had power, right? I got emails from people who I didn't know saying, that was an amazing competition scheme, and they all jinxed it. They all put Kan on it and it was gone, So it had this amazing amphitheater, it had this hovering block of, rooms on top, a library that had this oculus, it had everything, Khan and Cobb and everything vomited out into this project, There's Cobb in the corner there. But yeah, this is again Kiran. Kiran worked on this as well in the office. He was with us when we did this. A great guy called Rohan Patankar was a trainee. It's just me and him working initially on this scheme. Amazing guy from SPA. This was some ideas of this connection, of the different program elements immediately recognizable, the auditorium, the library, the seminar halls, and the accommodation, the treatment of that edge, which Varna has done so beautifully to protect and keep from the edge of the Nala. The idea that that public park would somehow seamlessly or notionally connect to this massive public space, almost like Lina Bobardi, this platform from which you could then become public, you could become part of a larger narrative of the city, that you would stand up there and the city would see you and know what it was to be public, and you would be there and look at the city and have a sense of destiny. That was the rhetorical idea of the competition. And then, of course, the gods said no, thank you. And the site proportions changed, and then, of course, we went for this incredible meeting with Naresh and all in the meeting. God bless Naresh. He did a lot for us on this project. But he said, you have some technical questions? It was 16 meters long. I'll tell you how it was going to be done. Mr. Hegde was our engineer. So that facade is actually a Verindale truss. The whole thing was going to just basically be a truss with openings in it. We worked it out. Because everybody looks at that and says, shit, that's not going to work. Yeah, but it became 12 meters after Mr. Hegde. So it's kind of not that great. But anyway, so then, we went for this meeting, and Naresh and all of them are in the meeting. And we had to change the height of the building because the setbacks didn't work anymore, That the lost?
No,
Fifth set?
fifth set.
Okay.
5 all.
Yeah, it's Jocko.
5-4.
Right, okay, anyway, sorry, George. So they said, you can't do 15 meters anymore because I can't leave 5 meters setback. The site is much narrower now. And so one of the trustees said, there's nothing in that middle, no? Why don't you just lower the upper? And I'm saying, but did you even look at the competition? Did you read anything, He said, but there's nothing there. So then we went back to the drawing board and we said, okay, so, that's a sketch, that says, okay, so now I don't have the ability to do, the big move. So maybe the public life of the building is within this, it's something that you encounter every day, that it isn't something that you have to make an effort to go up and become public, that in engaging with the building every day and moving through it, you got a sense of all of the people that you encountered and the life of the city through that engagement. This is a drawing that I made after, we had a girl called Nia at the office, and Nia, for the longest time, we used to enter in the middle of the plan, We would enter in the middle of the plan, and there'd be program on either side. And Nia said, what if we were to do the entry on the end of the plan? And we would stretch out, like Cobb would do, the promenade, the axis, so you deepen the public life of this building. And that's really what the BIC does so well, that space which you don't consider, that it's such a small building, but there's so much of the stuff that doesn't have program. We removed all of those rooms. It just became a large open space for pre-function, for the big hall, for the restaurant, that it just becomes, by stretching out, by shifting the location of that entry, you get then this amazing public space. And this is thanks to Nia and Rajendra Hegde, two people who were at the office then. So that, the central entry versus the elongated, stretched out promenade-like circulation through that building. And this is the drawing that we made to try and convince them. This is again a COVID drawing that Divyang made. BIC opened in 2019 to amazing, rapturous reception, and then COVID. And we said, oh my God, that's about it. This is as good as it gets. We've got 1 year of things to remember, and it's never going to be used again. And so Divyang made this drawing thinking that once in the future someday, there will be people again in that building. So he made all of these little, places where people would meet, how the cafe and the auditorium, and, this section is also Divyang, just remembering better times, with people in the building. Quite amazing drawings. Ink on butter sheet. This is the facade of the building, predicated on that 8-meter grid and basically 2-meter grid, subdivided. This is actually, to let the cat out of the bag. This is, if you look at the Caesar Pavilion, the one with the massive, post-tension. Was it post-tension? That big sort of canopy, the concrete canopy. The concrete canopy comes and ends on an end piece, which is basically the BIC elevation. It's very similar. It's a different scale, but it is the idea that there's this kind of cadence, and you always approach the pavilion obliquely like you do the BIC. And so from really not seeing anything, as you move to the building, it sort of reveals the glass, the materials. It starts becoming just not concrete, but other things. And we thought that was a nice. This is Surabhi again, fantastic drawing, showing us all of the layers of the different. You encounter different layers of this building as you move through, from the garden to the portals, the glass, and then that world with the brick wall at the end. Quite amazing. These are some drawings that we made of the building, and then some you've seen. But that's you see from as you approach it, it doesn't reveal what it's about, and then as you move to it, it sort of starts becoming a bit more, and then as you enter it, it's even warmer and welcoming. And this is sketches of that in between, the double height space, and the quality of that, and what it feels like to be in that volume. And then the auditorium, of course. Yeah, you've seen all that. So Neil McLaughlin again. I'd sent him drawings of this project and sent him the competition scheme, and he said something really lovely. He said, "I really like what you built. He's the only true friend I have." So he said, "I like it because in the competition scheme, the public gesture is rhetorical. You have to make an effort to get up there because it has no adjacency, it has no program up against it. You have to go up there to then enjoy that quality. Whereas in the building that you built, every time you walk through it to get to the elevator, to get to the lift, you're always engaging with the public life of the building." And he said, so that was why it was better. And I said, God bless you, Neil. You're going to get the Reba Gold Prize one day. And there are 18 iterations of the plan, and we have this amazing board that, Vaishali made. Just talking about. So if you were to read about this project, you would never become an architect. Because we got a grand sum. Shall I tell them, Suni, how pathetic it is? We got, 20 lakhs on this project for 7 years of work, giving all of the money out to our consultants, who all made enough to survive. Membership? No membership. We don't have membership. They still call us if they want to hang a picture somewhere. And there it's like, no, a little bit to the left. But we get a lot out of it. Every time they have, Ram Guha speak in the auditorium, or I don't know, Amartya Sen, having lunch in the cafe, someone says, "Man, I saw Amartya Sen at BIC." And I said, "Yeah, that's my cafe." Yeah. So that's the competition scheme, and then but you can see why my friends, that doesn't look that great. Form is what, design is how. So this is, I'm going to really brush through this, sorry. I've got to get to the Khan bit because I missed it in Goa, and I want to talk about Khan a bit at the end. This is the Market Masterclass. Glenn is close to 90 now. Richard is close to 90 now. They're not going to be doing this for much longer. It's slowing down. They're doing it for like a week at a time. If you can afford to do it, do it. Go. It's life-altering. It's amazing, not because you become a bit better architect for it, but it's because you spend time with people like them who are evolved. It's like the movie we made with Doshi. It's not, I don't have any lessons of architecture from that time, but it's about just how do you conduct yourself in the world, and that's what the Market Masterclass is about. So those are the tutors. There's Lindsay, Britt, Glenn, Richard, the great Richard, the sage of that group, and Peter Stachbury, the young fellow who just turned 70. So this is just amazing, and of course they don't do it at the Boyd Center anymore, which is a great loss for that experience. That's just the most sublime building. Just sitting on the edge of that. So this is the Shoalhaven River. It makes a bend and heads eastward. It's going towards the east there, and this building sits perpendicular to that eastward flow of the river. sitting, sort of capturing the morning light just perfectly. And it sits at that threshold between the wild native landscape and the cultivated landscape in Boyd's estate. Arthur Boyd was a very famous Australian artist. And the buildings that you see to the right of the long buildings are his cabin. You know, he is no longer there, but this estate is run by the Boyd family. It's just the most amazing. They've kind of ruined it now because some other architect has come and built some crap next to it, but when we went, it was just magic. Anyway, so you look up the Boyd Center. I don't have pictures of it, but it's just the most beautiful building. And so when we first came to the masterclass, we were asked to go out and sketch, and so you don't know what you paid, whatever 6 lakhs to go and do, or 4 lakhs to go and do. But slowly, the idea of it is that you immerse yourself in the act of observation, that you start drawing and just registering the things that you see. So that and you're not doing it with any kind of agenda, you don't have a design project in mind, you're just doing it, you're drawing what you see, you're kind of getting a sense of the place, the fall of the land, the quality of the light. But being an architect and running a practice, within the first week I had a scheme, and it was all flashy stuff, right? All crazy angles, all the views, interstitial spaces, looking at the mountains. And then Peter said, please hold on, you have to get out there. It's a path of discovery. And then Richard was telling me about how you draw so that you can catch. That's Richard's drawing at the bottom. When you're drawing, you're trying to pick the one thing that you want to focus on. And so I was focusing on every single leaf of every tree. And he said, is that really worthwhile? It's going to take you a few years to finish that drawing. I have to finish all of it. And he said, why don't you focus on something else? And then he started drawing, and he started just trying to understand what the land was like, right? This is formed by the breezes over millennia. It's got a shape, it's got a fall, it's got a rise, it's got a quality of darkness, a quality of shade, quality of intensity. So you're drawing like Peter was drawing those garbhagrahas, a drawing that evokes the feeling of being there. And that's essentially what you're trying to do. And then once you've got that, you're trying to figure out how you're going to occupy that land. What are you going to do? Are you going to put something that then projects out onto that falling landscape? Are you going to do something that is bridging the falling landscape? Or are you going to do something that is following that terrain? And so we connected the two sort of contour lines that marked the house and Boyd's studio. We cut those things out, we abstracted them, created these terraces that then worked along those ridges, and then built a plan out of a registry of the land, that you would come up and then make your way down a ramp and then get down at the lower contour back to the house. This was done with 6 others, so it was a group project, but it was just, from the scheme that we made first to this, within 2 weeks, just the idea that you would spend some time and it would get into your blood, and that there would be this amazing conversation between Boyd, Murcutt, and the 6 of us, that there would be this amazing drawing that then captured, this balance that then somehow seemed the way to inhabit that landscape. It was quite magical to be there with them. And they're very gentle ways of just pushing you so that you would wake up a bit, from private practice and its slumbers. And then, now for the final, I have a few slides on Khan's building. I think Suni has seen this 50,000 times and is now fed up. But she called it the Dominic Mother House. So anyway, the Dominican Mother House was a project that Khan got when he was, in what is called his late period, when he's kind of figured out everything and is now producing incredible things out of a hat, So he was born in 51, so he's 60, 67, 66 years old, 64 years old. This is also the time that he's designing the Management Institute. So the institute starts sometime in 61, goes all the way to 74. Khan's working on this project. And so all of this is happening simultaneously at his office. And there's this amazing book, Michael Merrill's book, on this one project and its gestation. So this is late Khan. Khan doing the great things that we all know Khan for. The idea of the discrete room. There's a great lecture by Shubhra Raje on Anant Raje, where she talks about the room and puts it up against Mies and the rejection of the room. And it's a great conversation between these two modern architects doing completely different things in the search for the sublime. And Khan starts the room, whether it is at the Hurva synagogue, the second plan or the third plan from the left, or at the Exeter Library, the second plan on the left, which has all of those carols on the peripheries, that really the library starts from that one person sitting, reading up against the window, and then the sequence of these from the brick to the timber to the concrete, and then to the light in the middle, the immaterial. So the discrete room as the beginning of architecture, and the Hurva synagogue is a great example of that, these little cells. It's like Nalanda, right? It looks almost exactly like the Nalanda plan. And that's the same with the individual and the collective, that somehow there's this relationship that they're also related in terms of scale and order. And that the structure, the organization of structure is what then that brings light into the building, that how I deal with the structural elements is how. And the notion that there are these spatial archetypes, that there are squares and triangles and circles, that you organize like our Nalanda plan or like the great Nalanda ruins, that you start with these spatial archetypes, and it's really the organization of these archetypes that then makes architecture. And he used to call it the society of rooms, where you would get all of these rooms organized in a way that created something really potent in between them. IISc, NEEV, BIC, they're all predicated on that idea of the in-between, of stuff that's happening between things. So to rush through this thing, Khan gets this project, he's 64 years old, he's doing what I do in the office, or what any of us do in the office. He's figuring out the program, the poor guy. He's got 15 rooms there, that's the thickness with the corridor, that's the height of 15 rooms. I need so many of these things to occupy so all of these are drawings that Khan's making to try and figure out. But at the same time that he's making those drawings, David Polk, his associate, on the letter that they get as an invitation to do this building, is making the first scheme of the project. So that plan is the first scheme that they pursued, which had, and this isn't coming from Khan, these are all the stay accommodation rooms, these are all the public, the church, the refectory, the classrooms, all of that on the other side. And so that's the plan they make. There's all of the accommodation, there's all the public stuff, and there's the big garden in the middle, sitting on that hill, Primrose Hill in Philadelphia. They go to the sisters, they think they've got it. How much does it cost? $5 million. The sisters look at each other and they say, but we've got only $1 million. So what are you going to do? So Khan's, okay, we'll come back to you. And the next 2 years, Khan's basically struggling to try and figure out a way to get this down to an amount that makes sense. But he's also copying from his IIM. He's placing into this plan elevations from IIM. You can see that there's a trace of IIM here. Some of these rooms are exactly the same size as some of the lecture halls that are in the IIM plan. That he's doing what all of us do, right? We all start the same way. We're all figuring out the way to do a plan with the things that we're familiar with. And at the same time in the office, Khan's doing the fantastic Fisher House. He's doing, Erdman Hall, where he's preoccupied with the idea of how you would handle an archetypal shape and how you would put them together and create places where you then would walk through, or as ambulation, that you would move through and create these little, places where they would intersect. And the same thing then starts appearing in this first collage. Khan's never made a collage in his life before. This is the first collage he makes. This is 1965, I think. He's cut pieces out of his IIM plan. So these three things are from the IIM plan. He's just cut and pasted there for scale. He's got the rooms figured out, so he knows how big that's going to be. But the author, Michael Merrill, says that it's also the time someone gifted him the Campomarzio plan, which is basically a collage. And it's hanging on top of Khan's table. And so Michael Merrill says that maybe Khan looked at Piranesi and said, oh, that's a nice way to make a plan. Let's cut stuff out of the buildings that I've made and let me try to make a plan out of it. And the Campo Marche plan is a fictional plan of Rome, which has all of the classical buildings in the geography of ancient Rome. So it's a great collage, if you will, of antiquity with contemporary Rome in Piranesi's time. So here's Khan struggling away, the first model that Khan makes for the project, and the only model that Khan makes for the project. And you can see slowly that it's getting collapsed into a plan that then is smaller in the search to get to that magic $1 million number. And that's the first time Khan has a plan that he thinks is now working. It's one of the magical plans that everybody sort of talks about. It has these incredible... I don't think it's fully resolved, and it maybe Khan needed another 5 years to sort of get it into some shape. But it creates, I'll tell you, and then it's still over budget, right? So he's gone to the sisters, it's around $2 million or $1.5 million, and they said, sorry, we still can't build it. And Khan down Xeroxes the plan. So he's done a 10% reduction, and he stuck it there, and then he goes back to them and he says, that's a plan. So the church is slightly smaller, the refectory is slightly smaller. And then, when I showed Neil this plan, Neil of course knew the plan, McLaughlin, he said, it reminds me of something. And then a few days later, he sent me that. This is 1953, this is 1965. Khan's obviously seen Matisse. And it's exactly the same thing. So everybody copies, everybody is influenced, and everybody is drawing from the world. There isn't a kind of font where you wear a black turtleneck and suddenly all of the ideas are coming in, You're looking at the world and the world is feeding you. And so I'm sure Khan is thinking of Matisse, he's thinking of Piranesi, he's standing on David Polk's shoulders to create a plan. But most importantly, he's responding to the client to come to the plan that then encapsulates what the order is about, the Dominican order. The Dominican order sees no distinction between the private lives of the sisters and their public outreach. So from a gestalt at the top, where there is that separation with the big garden as a classic monastery would have, Khan arrives at a plan which epitomizes what the order is about by collapsing the public and the private in the plan. What is the next logical step of this plan? Is to abandon the project. Because you say, I don't want this separation. I don't want people to leave their communities and come. And so, look at that. And so the sisters sent him a letter. And he said, and the sisters say, in these days of re-evaluation, renewal, and restudy, we feel that the complex buildings we originally envisioned would dictate decisions on our form of life rather than permit us to vary our life to fulfill our vocation amid the needs of today. And so they scrapped the project and started to operate out of parishes in the community. So sometimes the architect can also undermine his own work by bringing them to a realization of this distance that their project was making between community and... So I think this is it. So folk things about this Khan project that I think all of us have to think about. The first is, shouldn't the lifespan, so we think that our buildings need to last at least a 50-year lifespan, at least even the most inane project that we make has to have some kind of a life, and yet we have no time for its gestation. We get 2 weeks to submit something and then it's got to last 50 years, it makes no sense. So what is that gestation? How do you, I don't know how you do that in private practice, but it's the question that this project asks. The second is, to what degree has our capacity to reflect and conceptualize, and this is more pertinent now than ever, even before Michael Merrill's book, even after Michael Merrill's book, that we are able to conceptualize and reflect at a certain pace, and can we keep pace with the speed with which our tools are generating stuff for us to react to? The slowness of that drawing process that Khan is engaged in gives him time to understand and to preempt and to guess what is to come. And how might new tools and methods of practice be organized to allow not less time and space for conception? So rather than, we always talk about how we can reduce the amount of time, can there be any kind of tool that gives us more time to think and shortens the other bits that then can be done quicker? And the last and most profound question that Michael Merrill asks is that does not the quiet which Khan's buildings emanate? I don't know how many of you have been to IIM Ahmedabad or to any of his other buildings, but there's this kind of repose to those buildings that when you go there, they emanate this repose. Does that have something to do with the slowness of their conception? So, thank you. Please follow us on Instagram. From my manager.
To all the slides, the sketches, photos, and thank you for sharing your experiences and memories that were linked to your all the project sketches. And one thing that I noticed is you were mentioning all your fellow friends, your junior architects, interns while showing the work. You were sharing memories and taking their names. So actually, I came with a question that why 100 hands? Why particularly 100 and why hands only? But I got my answer somehow. I got this interpretation that you're mentioning so many people and you're giving credits to them. But still, I would like to ask you this question like, what is your thought behind 100 and what is your thought behind hands?
So the name was actually coined by Bijoy's brother Prem for an NGO that was going to do public work, and so it was about collaborative work and like bringing people together and stuff. And then that NGO didn't happen, so we said it was perfect for us because it's like a collaboration with so many people. And architecture is like an NGO anyway, so it was perfect. So we took it over, and yeah, but truly it's about collaborative work, and it's so many people coming together to make something, and it's just not the office doing it. It's like the consultants, the clients, and the construction team, and everybody. So it's just about collaborative and collaboration.
Yeah, when we first came back from the US and we had that name, my darling friend Harish said, "Tu 100 baar haath dega." That's the name of it.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know what to say.
You've seen it twice.
I've seen it twice and it still blows my mind. So what George said initially about in 10 minutes my mind changed twice. And I think as someone who's just trying to learn how to make up his mind about things, I would like to understand how when you walked amongst so many masters, how did you not just completely get influenced but still held your own ground, one. And second, I think you can answer this. I've been looking for someone to answer this question for me. Korea speaks about deep structure and how to study that, because I think what you just told us about the cave at Ellora, I think it hints at that, how to study the deep structure of any old buildings, because I struggle to do that. Can you shed some light?
Yeah, to take Neil's library and Manju's comment about being too careful. I think the important thing from Neil's portfolio work, the thing that really one has to learn is Neil's incredible erudition of the making of the plan. That he's a student of architecture, in the true sense that he's studying the histories. So if you look at Eliot, Eliot in 1902 writes this amazing piece called Tradition and the Individual Talent. It's a great essay about what it is to be a poet. And what he says is that you have these two conditions that make a poet, and it could be true for an architect. On the one hand is the understanding of the canon, that each of us have to go out there and seek the canon. What is the canon? Doshi is the canon, Achut Tanvinde, or Ellora is the canon, right? All that has gone before us that then makes what architecture is and what is powerful about it, and to try and decipher it in the way that we know. So this trip to, the trip that I made to go see Sikri or whatever, you go see Sikri and you're never going to make anything of that sublime quality, but you're drawing it in a way to try and get some of it into your bloodstream. That somehow, maybe at some point when you're making a plan and you've come to a dead end, that the hand will then lead you because it remembers that afternoon in Sikri when you made that section, or you made that sequence, that somehow absently, that if you made enough of Alto's curves, that you would then be able to make just the right curve. And so that's what Neil is doing, that you can see the references, and maybe he's young, I mean, he's probably just close to 60, he's just not that much older than I am. But, and so you can see that he's still becoming Neil McLaughlin. He's in that pursuit to become Cobb, Cobb knew Cobb was Cobb when he was 12 years old or something, I don't know. So in Barcelona, there's this amazing room where, I mean, this is again something that I've said thousands of times, but there's this room where Picasso is drawing Caravaggio. And he takes this painting where there are these three figures, and he's 12 years old and he's starting to paint it. And the first few canvases are almost identical to Caravaggio, right? He's already mastered the ability to make light, to get, whatever texture, the folds of the fabric, whatever you want, and the anguish in the faces, But as you go through that room and you come to the end of the room, there are these paintings that look nothing like Caravaggio and are now Picasso. There's still three figures in the painting, but they are now Picasso. And each of us is on that journey from the understanding of the canon to then making something of your own. There's a great essay by Malcolm Gladwell about precocity, that in our current environment, we really value someone, my God, he's only 20 years old and he's already made this amazing work, he must be a genius. And the poor old guy who's 55 and has just done something nice, they'll say, Arey, he's still struggling, this guy. Like, when is he ever going to figure it out? And so he makes this comparison between Picasso and I think it is Matisse. He says that Picasso knew he was Picasso when he was 12, that he had somehow tapped into the essence of what he wanted to say and how he wanted to say it. Whereas Matisse had to wait till he was 60, till then he was doing landscapes like this other guy or nudes like this other guy, and then suddenly he gets this, I don't know, the angel finally is kind and comes and says, okay, you've done enough riyaz, now here's the magic, and he whispers it and then there's Matisse. And so you can't avoid that first bit, which is to understand Kant, which is what he's doing. He's trying to get Kant because his great teacher, Shane de Blackham, tells Neil when he's in college that you have to look at Kant. And so then he's looking at Kant, and then there's the library, right, which is almost identical to a Kant plan. So there is a restraint, there is a control, there isn't that freedom that you want someone of a mature, a mature artist to have. But this is the riyaz, this is the root, this is what you have to do. And there's nothing wrong in it. This is his answer when I asked him that, that our teachers tell us to abstract, to take but not copy. And I'm telling you, copy. Copy till, and Doshi says it in the film beautifully, that when I was working with Cobb, I was being Cobb, I was signing like him, I was drawing like him. When I went to Khan's office, when Khan came to do IM, I was drawing like Khan, I made the trees like Khan, and so in that riyaz, this is not for everyone. I mean, because some people, when they're very young, have a way to somehow discover who they are. For the rest of us, there are all of these other people to copy, and then hopefully at 60, the angel will come. That was just that one question. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, I just have one question. From so many projects that you've done, is there something you would do differently today? And if so, why?
I think all projects, there'll be some bits and pieces of each which you think you could have done a little better or in a different way. But I don't think like overall there are any projects that we think could have been like way different than they are. But in bits and pieces, and I think architects are cursed. You go and look at only the bad things that you've done, and you tend to overlook everything else that's nice about the project. So, but I don't think any like holistic project that went wrong completely.
So, Bijoy, clearly, you'd studied most of these architects and their drawings and understood those buildings better. And we all know that all these architects, over a lifetime, their architecture evolves, their buildings evolve, like Picasso's paintings. Did you, while you researched, found that their way of drawing evolved?
Not so much drawings, but methods of looking evolve. That what, like the collage thing with Khan, he's 60 and suddenly he discovers collage, that may be one way to find a way to see, find a way to look. I know that so with Zumthor, while going through his catalog of projects, there are many projects where he never visited the site, and I think it was with Vals that he visits the site and it makes a dramatic difference to the way he then thinks about what he wants to do with Vals. The idea that he wants to move the mountain to then create the spring, and that's the beginning of this kind of shale rock thing. So I think that different architects, I think over time just find new ways of discovering what is embedded in projects. Like if I look at Khan's drawings, there is an inflection point in Khan's life when he goes to Rome. So before Rome, Khan's doing some neoclassical crap. He's doing some light steel construction buildings. He's working for a guy who does a lot of this kind of classical building work because he was his teacher. And then Khan gets the American Academy scholarship and goes to Rome for 3 months. And that completely rewired his mind. What's funny about that trip is that there's this guy who did a research on Khan's trip to Rome. And Khan made these amazing pastel drawings. He made pencil drawings of these monuments, right, in different parts of Italy. He also went to Egypt. And so this guy decided to go to recapture in photographs the same places from where Khan may have stood to draw these buildings. But very quickly he realized that the drawings were not made on site. He discovered in Khan's collection at the Philadelphia archive a small box with postcards. Khan came back to the American embassy, or the academy, and copied from the postcards the great sketches that he made. Remembering his trip, so you can take any route you want, but in drawing from these postcards and not from on site, there's something about his technique that shifts from, because the postcards, they're black and white for one, they contrast the shadow and the light, and so the author makes the supposition that in drawing from postcards, Khan discovers something about the intensity of the shadow in the Roman ruin. Khan comes back never to use steel again in the way that he used before, and to search constantly through all his life to make buildings that seemed as if they were the ruins, like the great bath in Rome, or that they were buildings that were devoid of modernity, that they had no trace of windows, no trace of air conditioning, no trace of plumbing, that they were buildings that were just screens with apertures in them. So much of his work is that, and the author is making the thesis that these low-resolution black and white postcards may have prompted Khan to look at architecture like that, Yeah.
When I saw the first slide of the presentation, I thought even Sunita ma'am would speak. But
I let the better.
so the thing is, we have heard Vijay sir talk about Glenn Masterclass many a times. I want to know your experience and your way of looking at a sketch or a drawing.
So, the masterclass, I've not done the masterclass. Only Vijay had the privilege. So, like he mentioned many times that I let him go. That was one of the big, more expensive vacations that he had. So, I also don't sketch at all. So that's what I told George. As soon as the poster came out, I'm like, I have to tell you that I don't sketch, but it has my name on it. But yeah, Vijay is the he draws like it's second nature to him, so it's you don't compete with that. So for me, it's I don't need to sketch. I kind of think and the right proportion comes to me. So it's different ways of looking at things, right? So I don't draw. What I see, I react to and come up with the right thing that I think is right to my sensibilities. So sketching is not something I do at all. It's more looking at spaces and the proportions of it. It's something that I can visually tell and react to it. So I don't sketch at all. So reactions is I can only admire people that sketch so beautifully. I think it's a blessing because you can actually express something that's in your mind so much more easily to people rather than just talk about it or react to something that's being done. So yeah, it's a gift and I'm not gifted at sketching.
So you speak better to express? Is that what it is?
That also he does much better, but...
So how do you express what you visualize?
Yeah, just by talking or reacting to things. I
Got that.
don't sketch, yeah. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, just to continue what Suni was saying, it's also, a lot of the stuff that I draw, Suni sees it and is able to tell immediately whether, in terms of proportion and scale. So you may be able to draw really well, but that does not guarantee that you know what you're doing. You still need to be able to visualize and to be able to tell whether this is working in terms of just its experience or its quality. And so I mean, for those of you who can't draw that well, it doesn't matter. I mean, you have to be able to tell. When you see something, you should be able to tell what whether it's working or not, and that's the real skill.
And I think that comes with seeing a lot of good stuff and experiencing a lot of great architecture, great design, anything beautiful, it comes over time.
Probably that's why you made for research.
No, that is like a very big statement, but yeah.
Bijoy, you spoke about Riyaz and going into detail and depth, and we all know how beautifully you describe masters and how beautifully you describe what they may have thought or think. And clearly, you also go deep into those thoughts and Riyaz. Has it ever messed with your head or in your own path to come out when you're drawing, where you come out of that and where you start your path or start to draw?
I don't know, this may be controversial to say, but the more that you are aware, the more in a way you get paralyzed.
Yeah.
That and as you get older, it gets tougher because you're less free and you feel that there is the burden of history and the burden of, what am I really working as hard and as carefully as I used to? And that's, how do you live with that? That's part of what you do as a person, and your abilities do decrease and you kind of have to find other ways to work. But yes, the awareness of the great masters is in a way sometimes limited, because Doshi had come to our office once, and in our conference room there are these three posters. There's Cobb, Mies and Frank Lloyd Wright poster, and he said, "How do you work in this office?" And I said, why sir, what happened? Everything is already here. Like, look at Cobb's one poster, all the ideas are here. What are you going to do? And it's true. I mean, when you look at, but thankfully we have clients who then tell us that this is all shit, like think about it again. And so you react, and in those react, which is why I think this idea of the genius architect and the singular idea is a bit flawed, because I think it is in that messy negotiation that you have with reality that the great stuff happens, or the good stuff happens. And it's always different, which is why practice is so, it's difficult, but it's also delightful in that you invariably at a time when you're not feeling great, something happens at the office, there's something that someone said or something someone did that surprises you, that makes suddenly it's all worthwhile, that there's something. And so it's not, the burden is not on you that, oh God, I'm paralyzed with the weight of history on my shoulders, let me ask John or Mohit or Parikshit, maybe they, and there's something that then comes out of what they're doing that then triggers what the project can be. So I think we move away from the idea of that master. Of course, we look at the masters but then like Kant's project, you see that there are all of these other factors that are working to make the sublime thing. And Kant's not pulled it out of a hat. He's been negotiating, and it is in that negotiation that something great came out. But it still brings to bear his trip to Rome, it still brings to bear his understanding of context, it still brings to bear all of that, the lessons of history now manifest in this negotiation.
No, I was just thinking about what Sunita was saying to that, replying to that question, and it just to kind of, it's not a question, but it's just a thought. I thought, if you extract just 2 slides from the presentation and almost look at it as being on 2 ends of the spectrum. One is the diagram for the Nalanda University, which spoke about movement. It was very minimal. And then you have the Peterage drawing on the other end of the spectrum you couldn't add another line to it. And I was just thinking that one drawing or a diagram was about criticality. It was an intellectual stand taken in terms of what is doing, and the other is a completely emotional kind of, it has an emotional bearing on.
It's like such a feeling.
Yeah, it's yeah. And it's almost like, everything in between this presentation that we saw, and I don't regret to saying that Djokovic was a sinner, but it really fills up. But it really fills up everything in between the 2 spectrums of drawing as an intellectual pursuit or taking the stand in the most, and somehow it just feels like in the most minimal way, that's all you can do, something that's about the mind, and then when you kind of layer it, it really becomes about the heart. And I thought that was a really nice thing that came through in the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy and Suni. Thank you for reminding us that architecture is can be like thoughtful, grounded, and deeply human. There's this interesting 2 photos of Sabha before and after. Just telling you, it's quite. There's something poetic about it. I don't know if you notice. There's one guy over there in the older building wearing a kachra and standing there, almost like waiting for somebody to come into the building. And the next photo's got somebody who's ready and he's just taken off. There's so much in that says that it wanted you or anybody. We're glad that you want that. So, also that the drawings are just not representations, but like acts of discovery. Like a simple drawing can search, question, debate. I think the hesitation, everything, and then you finally arrive right to something good. Now you remind us that thinking through hand is still one of the most powerful tools we have. So thank you very much for that. And we're so happy that we could start the first chapter with you. Now you talk about downhill from your after I spoke. I don't think it's going to be a big feat for everybody else. But just a few thank yous which I need to mention. A big thank you to Varun and Yash from Elementary. It's always reassuring that to have collaborators who believe in the whole thought of it rather than expecting an outcome. So I think I've dealt with them. Great people to work with. Please check them out. They go by the name, the brand name Element. Kitchens, wardrobes, all the works. There are no other options. I said either they're my clients as well, so either I'll cut it from my fees or you. But anyway, thank you so much, Varun and Yash. Can I just ask you guys to just give a small memento to Bijoy and Sunita? Our entire backbone, that is, the reason I feel excited when I walk in and slightly stressed when I walk out, which probably means we're doing something right. A heartfelt thank you to everybody who showed up, listened, asked questions, and made the evening that it was. We'll be having more of these sessions, like I said. Please follow us. Grateful for the conversations, the people, the evening. Thank you very much.